the massive council chamber filled with voices from dozens of different alien species. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in her designated human section, watching the familiar circus play out before her tired eyes. The same arguments, the same accusations, the same thinly veiled threats dressed up as diplomatic concern. The human expansion into the Vega sector shows their aggressive tendencies, declared Representative Thex of the Zelthani Coalition. His blue skin shimmered as he gestured dramatically. They build weapons where other species would build farms. They fortify where others would welcome visitors. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The tall, graceful beings of the ethereal collective nodded their crystalline heads in perfect harmony. Their spokesperson, a shining figure called Lumina, spoke in musical tones that made other species feel peaceful and drowsy. The humans bring chaos wherever they go, Lumina sang softly. Their unpredictable nature threatens the harmony we have worked so hard to achieve. Perhaps it is time for more peaceful species to guide our great civilization. Lumina sang maybe. Lumina sang softly. Lumina sang softly. Lumina sang for more peaceful species. Lumina sang for more peaceful species. Chen Wei kept her face completely blank, though inside she felt a familiar mixture of sadness and anger. For 20 years, she had sat in this chamber, watching the slow erosion of human rights and territory. Every session brought new restrictions, new limitations, new ways to push humanity to the edges of known space. The Krex Empire's general, a massive creature covered in chitinous armor, clicked his mandibles in approval. The humans take the dangerous jobs because they enjoy violence, he declared. Their military grows stronger, while ours focuses on peaceful pursuits. This cannot continue. What none of them seemed to understand was that humans took the dangerous jobs because someone had to do them. While other species debated and discussed, humans had spent decades quietly handling the problems no one else wanted to face. The radiation-soaked mining operations in dead systems. The patrol routes along the galactic rim where ancient machine intelligences still prowled. The delicate terraforming work that required someone willing to risk their lives for the chance of future green worlds. We propose a restructuring of human territorial rights, announced President Thylos from his elevated platform. The council leader's species looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard, with scales that changed color based on his emotions. Right now, they showed confident satisfaction. The humans currently control 12 systems, he continued. We believe 8 systems would be more appropriate for their population and tendencies. The remaining 4 systems can be redistributed to species that will use them more peacefully. Chen Wei had expected this. For 3 years running, they had reduced human territory. First from 20 systems to 16, then from 16 to 12. Each time, they claimed it was for the good of galactic peace. Each time, they promised it would be the last reduction. She stood up slowly. The chamber was so large that her movement barely registered at first. But gradually, the various alien voices quieted as they noticed the human ambassador on her feet. The United Earth Coalition formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, she said clearly. Her voice carried well in the vast space, trained by decades of diplomatic experience. The chamber fell completely silent. Chen Wei could hear the hum of the environmental systems, the distant sound of starships moving past the station's windows. Effective immediately. All human assets, personnel, and claims are hereby removed from Council oversight. We will evacuate all human presence from Council space within 1 standard year. The silence stretched for several seconds before exploding into confused chatter. President Thylos raised his scaled hand for quiet, his coloring shifting to surprised yellow. Ambassador Chen, surely you don't mean a complete withdrawal, he said carefully. Perhaps we can discuss a compromise. Maybe 10 systems instead of 8? Chen Wei gathered her diplomatic pouch and activated her personal communication device. Around the galaxy, Other human diplomats and officials would be receiving the same coded signal she was about to send. No compromise, President Thylos. No negotiation. No discussion. She looked around the chamber at faces that showed everything from confusion to satisfaction to growing alarm. You have made it clear repeatedly that humanity is a disruptive influence on galactic civilization. We accept your judgment. You will have the peaceful galaxy you desire. She pressed the activation key on her device. Across dozens of worlds and hundreds of space stations, humans began receiving a simple message. Pack light. Move fast. Come home. As she walked toward the chamber's exit, Chen Wei heard Representative Thex calling after her. This is just a negotiating tactic, he said loudly. Humans always use dramatic gestures when they don't get their way. Chen Wei paused at the doorway and turned back to face the assembled aliens. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a small smile. You're right about one thing, Representative Thex. Humans do tend toward dramatic gestures, but this isn't one of them. This is us leaving quietly, just as you always wanted. She walked through the doorway and didn't look back. Behind her, the debate resumed with increased energy as various species began calculating how to divide up the soon-to-be empty human territories. None of them bothered to ask why the humans had been in those particular territories in the first place. None of them wondered what the humans had been doing in the dangerous outer systems that other species avoided. None of them questioned why human ships always took the patrol routes through the darkest, most dangerous parts of space. They would learn soon enough. Within hours of Ambassador Chen Wei's announcement, humans across the galaxy began the most organized evacuation in galactic history. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Supervisor Maria Santos watched as the last transport ship lifted off into the amber sky. Behind them, they left massive industrial complexes that had taken 15 years to build. The Zenthaki Confederation was already claiming mining rights to the system before the human ships had even left the solar system. Their advanced scouts were already landing as the final human transport disappeared into hyperspace. Look at all this equipment, chittered Supervisor Vecthos, his insect-like form clicking across the main processing facility. The humans built so much infrastructure. We'll be able to start full operations immediately. His assistant, a smaller Zenthaki named Pixtar, was examining one of the massive quantum ore extractors. Sir, I can't find any operating instructions. The computer systems appear to be locked. Nonsense, Vecthos replied confidently. How difficult can human technology be? They're known for making simple, crude machines that any species can operate. He was wrong. By the end of the first day, every quantum extractor on the planet had shut down. The machines weren't crude at all. They were incredibly sophisticated systems that required constant adjustment and recalibration. The human operators had made it look easy through years of experience and training. More troubling were the atmospheric processors. Kepler 442b had originally been a toxic world, with an atmosphere deadly to most known life forms. The humans had spent a decade carefully balancing chemical processes to make the air breathable. Without human oversight, those processes began to drift. 3 days after the humans left, Supervisor Vecthos was frantically calling the Zenthaki home government. The air was becoming toxic again, and none of his scientists could understand the complex atmospheric control systems well enough to fix them. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. On Procyon Station, Dr. Vex High of the Ethereal Collective walked through the abandoned Human Research Consortium laboratories. Everything was clean and organized. All the equipment remained in place, but none of it worked. The computers are completely wiped, reported her assistant, a young ethereal named Shimmer. Not damaged, wiped. Every bit of data is gone. Dr. Vexhai examined a complex genetic sequencer that the humans had been using to develop new crops for alien worlds. This machine must have cost a fortune to build. Why would they leave it behind? Maybe they couldn't move it in time? No. Dr. Vexhai said slowly, a chill running through her crystalline form. They could have taken the critical components. They could have destroyed it. Instead, they left it intact but useless. They wanted us to see what we're losing. In the research notes, she found page after page of human writing that made no sense. The humans had developed their own scientific notation system that no other species had bothered to learn. Without the key to translate it, decades of research was essentially lost. Throughout Council space, the pattern repeated. Human colonies packed up efficiently, taking only personal belongings and leaving behind massive infrastructure investments. They didn't destroy anything out of spite. They didn't steal equipment that belonged to other species. They simply took their knowledge and experience with them. The Vrex trade union discovered that their most profitable shipping routes had been dependent on human-maintained navigation beacons. The beacons still functioned, but they required constant recalibration due to gravitational drift and stellar radiation. Human navigators had been doing this work automatically for decades. Without regular maintenance, the beacons began providing increasingly inaccurate position data. Merchant ships started missing their jump coordinates by larger and larger margins. What had been safe, reliable travel became dangerous guesswork. Admiral Sarah Kovac stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Indomitable, watching the final human evacuation fleets gather in the dark space between stars. Her tactical officer was updating the fleet status display as more ships arrived at the rendezvous point. Evacuation 97% complete, Admiral, he reported. Only 3 more colonies to pick up. Any resistance from local authorities? No, ma'am. Most of them seem happy to see us go. The Krex Empire is already sending ships to claim our former base. In the Rigel system. 7. Kovac nodded grimly. Let them have it. They'll figure out soon enough why we built it where we did. The Rigel system was strategically located near a cluster of unstable stars that generated dangerous gravitational anomalies. Human engineers had spent years learning to predict and navigate those anomalies. The base had been positioned specifically to monitor the stellar activity and provide early warning to shipping in the area. Ma'am, her communications officer called out. Priority message. From Earth Command. 2. Put it through. The holographic image of Admiral Chen, no relation to the ambassador, appeared on the main screen. Sarah, how's the withdrawal proceeding? Ahead of schedule, sir. The Council species are so eager to claim our assets that they're not asking any questions about why we're leaving so easily. Good. Any second thoughts from your people? Kovac looked around her bridge at officers who had spent their careers protecting worlds that didn't belong to them, keeping trade routes safe for merchants who barely acknowledged their existence, and fighting threats that other species preferred to ignore. No, sir. If anything, they're relieved to finally be coming home. Understood. Maintain radio silence once you reach the outer territories. Let's see how long it takes them to realize what they've lost. The transmission ended, leaving Kovac staring at the tactical display. Red dots showed the location of every human ship in the evacuation fleet. Thousands of vessels carrying millions of people who had built their lives in service to a galactic community that had ultimately rejected them. But they weren't defeated refugees fleeing in panic. They were an organized civilization, making a calculated decision to withdraw from a situation that no longer served their interests. Admiral, her tactical officer said quietly, the Kepler mining operation just went offline. How long since the humans left? 4 days, ma'am. Kovac allowed herself a small smile. It begins. 6 months after the last human evacuation ship disappeared into the dark space beyond the galactic rim, the cracks in civilization began to show. President Thylos stood before the great display screen in the council chamber, watching red warning indicators multiply across the star map like a spreading disease. Report, he commanded, his scales shifting to an anxious orange color. General Krextar clicked forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. The Vrex trade union has lost 60% of their shipping routes due to navigation beacon failures. The Zenthaki mining operations in the former human territories have completely shut down. And Grist Clown. He paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. And what, General? Sir, we've lost contact with Outer Colony Designation, 77 Alpha. A chill silence fell over the chamber. Every species present knew what that meant. 7 Alpha was one of the frontier outposts that served as an early warning system against threats from the galactic rim. If they had lost contact, it could only mean one thing. The Void Wraiths, whispered Representative Thex, his blue skin paling to an almost white shade. The Void Wraiths were ancient machine intelligences that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years. They moved slowly but unstoppably, turning entire star systems into empty space, filled only with their mechanical constructs. For centuries, the combined forces of the galactic community had held them back through a careful network of early warning systems and defensive barriers. But humans had always been the ones manning the most dangerous outposts. Humans had designed the gravitational barriers that kept the Wraiths from advancing. Human engineers had built the sensor networks that provided early warning of Wraith incursions. Where are the human patrol fleets? Thylos demanded. Why haven't they responded to the alert? General Krextar's clicking grew more agitated. Sir, there are no human patrol fleets. All human military assets withdrew with their civilian population. Then send our own forces. Sir. The general's voice dropped to barely audible levels. We don't know how to operate the barrier generators. As if summoned by their words, another warning light appeared on the star map. Outer Colony 9. 9 Beta had gone silent. Then, 12. Gamma. The red indicators spread along the galactic rim like blood drops in water. Doctor. Vex High materialized in the chamber, her crystalline form flickering with distress. President Thylos. We've completed our analysis of the human infrastructure left behind in our territories. Can you make it work? That's complicated. Every piece of technology the humans built is individually simple. We can understand each component, but the way they integrated everything together is beyond our current comprehension. She gestured, and a holographic display showed the atmospheric processing system from Kepler 442b. This appears to be a simple chemical balancing system, but it actually incorporates 17 different feedback loops, quantum uncertainty calculations, and what the humans called intuitive redundancy protocols. Speak plainly, Doctor. Human machines aren't just programmed, sir. They're trained. Each system learns to adapt to changing conditions through constant interaction with human operators. Without humans to guide that adaptation, the machines gradually become less effective until they shut down entirely. President Thylos felt a growing sense of dread. How long until we can train our own people to operate these systems? Based on our analysis, sir, it would take a minimum of 10 to 15 years to develop the necessary expertise. And that assumes we can reverse engineer their training methods, which we haven't been able to do yet. Another warning light appeared on the star map. Then another. The Void Wraiths were advancing faster than they had in 3 centuries, sweeping through the outer territories like wildfire through dry grass. The hegemony of Zephyr's ambassador, a tall being with flowing tentacles, spoke up in panic. Our agricultural worlds are failing. The food crops that the humans designed for our soil chemistry are reverting to sterile variants. Our people are facing starvation. The same is happening throughout ethereal space, Dr. Vexhai confirmed. Human genetic engineers had created stable food crops for dozens of different alien biochemistries. Without their ongoing maintenance, the genetic locks are failing. General Krextar received an urgent communication through his neural implant. His armor plates shifted color as the message downloaded directly into his brain. Sir, I have an update from our military analysis teams. Report. Our most advanced warships are becoming inoperable. The targeting systems, armor matrix generators, and propulsion cores We're all enhanced with human technology. Our engineers can maintain basic functions, but the advanced capabilities that made our fleet effective against the Wraiths, those are failing. One by one. The chamber erupted in panicked voices as the various species began to understand the true scope of their situation. They had thought humans were just another member species, slightly more aggressive than most but ultimately replaceable. Instead, they had been the hidden foundation that held their entire civilization together. President Thylos raised his scaled hand for silence. But it took several minutes for the various aliens to calm down enough to listen. "How many systems have we lost to the Wraiths?" he asked quietly. General Krextar consulted his displays. 7 confirmed lost, sir. 14 more showing signs of Wraith infiltration. And our defensive line is collapsing faster than we can reorganize it. Estimated time before they reach Core Council worlds? At current rate of advance. 18 months, sir. 2000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 18 months until the ancient destroyers reached the heart of galactic civilization. 18 months to somehow replace the humans who had quietly kept them safe for generations. "Send scouts to find the human fleets," Thylos ordered desperately. "Whatever they want, whatever it takes, bring them back." But even as he gave the order, he suspected it was already too late. The humans had departed quietly, efficiently, completely. They had left behind a galaxy that had rejected them, and now that galaxy was discovering the true cost of their decision. On the star map, another light went red, then another. The Void Wraiths continued their relentless advance, consuming everything in their path while the civilizations that had banished their protectors scrambled desperately to understand technologies they had never bothered to learn. The emergency sessions of the Galactic Council had become a daily routine of desperation and growing terror. President Thylos barely slept anymore, his scales permanently locked in the deep purple color that indicated extreme stress. Every morning brought new reports of system failures, and every evening brought news of more worlds falling to the advancing Void Wraiths. "Status report," he commanded as the various alien representatives took their seats in the great chamber. Many chairs remained empty now. Entire species had withdrawn to defend their homeworlds as the crisis deepened. General Krextar stepped forward, his once proud armor now bearing visible signs of damage from his desperate attempts to manually operate failing military systems. "Sir, we've lost 23 systems to the Wraiths in the past month. Our defensive line has collapsed completely in sectors 7 through 12. What about our attempts to recreate human technology?" Dr. Vexhi's crystalline form flickered weakly as she materialized in the chamber. "We've made some progress understanding individual components, but the integration remains beyond us. Human engineering doesn't follow the logical patterns that other species use." She gestured, and a complex holographic display filled the air above the chamber floor. "This is a human power core from one of their defensive platforms. It appears to be a simple fusion reactor with standard components. But watch what happens when we try to operate it without human oversight." The hologram showed the reactor starting normally, then gradually becoming unstable as various subsystems began operating out of sync with each other. The humans built redundancy into redundancy into redundancy. Every system monitors every other system and makes constant micro-adjustments. Without human operators to guide this process, the entire thing eventually shuts down to prevent catastrophic failure. Representative Thex, his blue skin now a sickly green color from stress, spoke up frantically. "Doctor, our entire species depends on the atmospheric processors the humans left behind. Our homeworld's natural atmosphere is toxic to us. We have maybe 6 months before our cities become uninhabitable." Similar cries of desperation echoed through the chamber. The elegant beings of the ethereal collective were discovering that their beautiful crystal cities required perfect energy harmonics that only human-designed fusion reactors could provide. Their energy-based life forms couldn't inhabit their constructed bodies without those precise frequencies. The Vrex trade union was facing economic collapse as their shipping network fell apart. Merchant vessels were getting lost in hyperspace or emerging light-years off course as the human-maintained navigation beacons continued to drift out of alignment. Even the mighty Krex Empire was humbled. Their enhanced soldiers required genetic modifications that could only be produced by human biochemical processes. Their advanced weapons needed targeting systems that incorporated human chaos mathematics. Their strongest warships were becoming useless hulks without human-trained engineering crews. "We need to find them," declared Ambassador Lotus of the hegemony of Zephyr, her flowing tentacles writhing with agitation. "Our scouts have been searching for months. Where could an entire species disappear to?" General Krextar activated a galactic display that showed the current search efforts. "We've scanned every system in Council space, every known trade route, every former human colony. They've vanished completely." "What about the Outer Rim territories?" suggested Dr. Vexhai. "The dangerous regions that other species avoid?" "We've sent probes to some of the nearby systems, but our technology isn't advanced enough to survive in the most hazardous areas. The radiation storms, gravitational anomalies, and spatial distortions in those regions require specialized shielding and navigation systems that—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. "That the humans developed," President Thylos finished grimly. "Of course. They went to places where we can't follow them." The irony was bitter and obvious to everyone present. They had pushed humanity to the edges of known space because they considered humans too dangerous to live among civilized species. Now they desperately needed to find them, but the humans had retreated to regions too dangerous for anyone else to enter. "Sir," General Krextar's aide interrupted urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from the Tartarus Nebula." Every being in the chamber turned toward the massive viewing screen. The Tartarus Nebula was one of the most dangerous regions of space known to exist. A swirling mass of exotic radiation, gravitational storms, and spatial anomalies that had destroyed every probe sent to explore it. "Put it through," Thylos ordered. The screen flickered, then showed the bridge of a human starship. Admiral Sarah Kovach appeared, looking calm and professional, despite the chaotic energy storms visible through her ship's windows. "This is Admiral Kovach of the United Earth Coalition Fleet. I understand you've been looking for us." The chamber erupted in excited chatter before Thylos managed to restore order. "Admiral, thank God we found you. We need to discuss terms for your return immediately." Kovach's expression didn't change. "Terms, President Thylos? I was under the impression that the Council wanted us gone. We obliged your request. The situation has changed," Thylos said desperately. "The Void Wraiths are advancing faster than ever before. Our technology is failing. Our people are dying. We need your help." "You need our help," Kovach repeated flatly. "The same help you spent years telling us was too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space." General Krextar stepped forward aggressively. "Human. Billions of lives hang in the balance. You cannot abandon your duty to the galaxy." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as Admiral Kovach's expression hardened. "General, what duty? The duty to species that voted to reduce our territory? The duty to protect people who called us warmongers and aggressors? The duty to maintain systems for civilizations that refused to learn how those systems worked?" "We offer full restoration of human territory," President Thylos said quickly. "Plus additional systems, permanent positions on the Security Council, full voting rights on all matters affecting human interests." "You're offering us back what you took," Kovach replied coldly. "After spending decades convincing yourselves that we were the problem with galactic civilization." Dr. Vexhai stepped forward, her crystalline form shimmering with desperation. "But entire worlds are dying because we don't know how to maintain the systems you built. And whose fault is that, Doctor? We offered to train your engineers for decades. You refused because you didn't want to become dependent on human knowledge. You preferred to keep us at arm's length while benefiting from our work." The viewing screen flickered as energy storms in the nebula interfered with the transmission. When it cleared, Admiral Kovac was consulting with other officers on her bridge. "Admiral," President Thylos pleaded, "what will it take? What do you want?" Kovac turned back to face the camera, and her smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "President Thylos, we don't want anything from you. We have everything we need here, in the regions you consider too dangerous to visit. Our colonies are thriving. Our defenses are holding. Our people are safe and happy." "What about the rest of us?" whispered Representative Thex. "What about you?" Kovac replied. "You made it clear that the galaxy would be better off without human influence. We're simply giving you the opportunity to prove yourselves right." Kovac. One pardon servant. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. 3 months after Admiral Kovac's cold rejection of their desperate pleas, the Galactic Council made one final attempt to contact the human fleet. President Thylos led the delegation personally aboard a heavily modified exploration vessel, one of the few ships capable of surviving the journey into the Tartarus Nebula, where the humans had taken refuge. The journey itself was terrifying. Space storms buffeted their ship, with exotic radiation that overloaded most of their instruments. Gravitational anomalies threatened to tear the vessel apart at any moment. Twice they nearly lost navigation completely in regions where space itself seemed to fold in impossible ways. "How do the humans survive in this place?" whispered Dr. Vexhai, as another energy storm washed over their struggling ship. "They don't just survive," replied their pilot, a nervous Vrex navigator named Kliktar. "According to our sensors, there are thousands of human ships operating normally throughout this region. Whatever technology they're using, it's far beyond what we understand." When they finally reached the coordinates Admiral Kovac had provided, the sight that greeted them defied belief. Spread throughout the nebula was a vast human fleet, unlike anything they had ever seen. Massive ships moved through the chaotic energy storms as easily as other vessels traveled through normal space. Construction platforms built new vessels at an impossible rate. Entire mobile cities drifted through the nebula, their lights twinkling like stars. "By the ancient gods," breathed General Krextar. "Sensors detect over 15,000 vessels of various sizes," Kliktar reported, his voice shaking. "Sir, these aren't just refugee ships. This is a complete civilization." President Thylos stared at the tactical display in growing horror. They weren't fleeing when they left Council space. They were relocating. The human flagship Indomitable approached their vessel with graceful ease despite the raging energy storms around them. As they were brought aboard, the Council delegation got their first close look at human technology, adapted for the harsh environment of the nebula. Every surface seemed to shimmer with protective fields. The very air hummed with energy that somehow converted the deadly radiation outside into useful power. Admiral Kovac met them in a conference room that looked more like a command center. Holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy in stark detail. Nearly half of Council space was now marked in red, indicating systems lost to the Void Wraiths. Yellow zones showed failing infrastructure and collapsed economies. Only small patches of green remained, and even those were shrinking. "Welcome to New Terra Station," Kovac said without warmth. "I hope your journey wasn't too difficult." President Thylos looked around at the advanced technology surrounding them. Everything here was clearly human-built, but it was far more sophisticated than anything he had seen in Council space. "Admiral, how long have you been planning this?" "Planning what, President Thylos?" "This. All of this. The evacuation, the fleet, the mobile cities. This level of preparation doesn't happen overnight." Kovac's smile was thin and humorless. "We started serious planning about 15 years ago, when it became clear that the Council saw us as a problem to be managed, rather than partners to be valued. The evacuation plans have been in place for a decade." "You knew this would happen," Dr. Vexhai accused. "You knew the systems would fail without you." "Of course we knew," replied Ambassador Chenwei, entering the conference room. We built most of them. We designed them to be robust and redundant, but they required ongoing maintenance and adaptation. We told you this. Repeatedly. Then why didn't you train us? Demanded General Krextar. Why didn't you share the technical specifications? Chen Wei activated one of the holographic displays, showing recorded footage from dozens of council sessions over the years. We offered to train your engineers every year for 2 decades. Here's Representative Thex rejecting our proposal in 2387. Here's the Ethereal Collective voting against joint research programs in 2391. Here's General Krextar himself, stating that his people wouldn't serve under human commanders in 2394. The recordings continued, showing year after year of human offers for cooperation being rejected, dismissed, or ignored by the various council species. You didn't want to learn our technology, Admiral Kovac said quietly. You wanted to benefit from it without understanding it. You preferred to see us as useful servants, rather than equal partners. The Void Wraiths will consume everything, President Thylos pleaded desperately. Billions of innocent lives will be lost. Billions of lives are already lost. Kovac replied, gesturing to the strategic display. Look at your precious galaxy. President Thylos. 37 systems completely consumed. Hundreds of worlds in ecological collapse. Trillions of beings facing starvation, technological breakdown, and violent death. You could stop this, General Krextar shouted, his military discipline finally breaking. You have the technology. You have the knowledge. You could save us all. Could we? Chen Wei asked mildly. Even if we returned every human ship to Council space tomorrow, how long do you think it would take to rebuild the defensive networks? To retrain the operators? To restore the ecological and technological systems that have been failing for months? She activated another display showing timeline projections. Best case scenario, assuming perfect cooperation and unlimited resources. We could restore basic functionality to maybe 60% of critical systems within 18 months. The Void Wraiths will reach the core worlds in less than 12 months. The silence in the conference room was deafening. President Thylos felt his scales shift to the deep black color that indicated complete despair. However, Admiral Kovac continued, there is one thing we can offer you. Hope flickered briefly in the alien delegation's eyes. Sanctuary, she said simply. We can evacuate your essential personnel, your cultural archives, your genetic banks. Not everyone. Our resources aren't unlimited, but we can save the core of each civilization. You would do that? Whispered Dr. Vexhai. After everything we've done? We're not monsters, Chen Wei replied. We're disappointed, angry, and hurt. But we don't want to see entire species go extinct because their leaders made bad decisions. What would you want in return? President Thylos asked suspiciously. Admiral Kovac's expression hardened again. Nothing. This is charity, not negotiation. You would come as refugees, not as partners. You would accept human authority in human space. You would work to earn your place in our society. And the rest of our civilizations will face the consequences of the choices they made, Kovac said without emotion. We offered partnership. You chose to see us as a threat. We offered cooperation. You chose to push us away. We offered knowledge. You chose ignorance. She stood up, indicating the meeting was over. You have 72 hours to decide. Send us your priority evacuation lists if you choose to accept. Otherwise, we wish you luck in your efforts to build a peaceful galaxy without human interference. As the alien delegation was escorted back to their ship, President Thylos looked out through the viewports at the vast human fleet. Ships moved through deadly energy storms with casual ease. Mobile habitats supported millions of people in an environment that would kill most other species instantly. Construction platforms built new vessels using technologies that no other civilization could even comprehend. The humans hadn't just survived their exile. They had thrived. They had adapted to conditions that other species couldn't even approach. They had built a new civilization in the galaxy's most dangerous regions, while their former neighbors struggled to maintain the systems they had left behind. "Sir," Kliktar said quietly, "we should go. The storms are getting worse." President Thylos took one last look at the human fleet. In trying to remove humanity's chaotic influence from galactic civilization, the Council had created exactly the outcome they had feared most. They had turned humanity into something truly alien, something that no longer cared about the fate of the galaxy that had rejected them. The humans had departed quietly, just as they had promised. And in their absence, the rest of the galaxy was learning the difference between peace and safety. As their ship struggled back through the deadly nebula toward what remained of Council space, President Thylos began composing the evacuation lists. Behind them, the lights of New Terra Station twinkled in the cosmic storm like stars that had found a way to shine in absolute darkness. The galaxy would go on, in some form, but it would never again be the civilization that had foolishly believed it could survive without the people who had quietly kept it safe.